But what we did is we constructed a survey of voters in the state of Arkansas. And I'll flip forward to this slide. As we're looking at, this is a demographic profile of what the state of Arkansas looks like as it relates to the voting electorate. Just a couple of things to point out. I mean, you are dealing with an electorate that probably no shock in here is conservative. 60% of the voters in the state identify themselves as conservative, and you do have a handful of percentage of more females that vote in the electorate than men do, 54% female versus 46% men. So you know, this has a margin of error of roughly 4. So there's about a 4%, plus or minus that is considered the margin of error. And just from a demographic side, we broke each one of the demography side from a regional standpoint, just down by congressional district. You guys have pretty well-drawn congressional districts here, and they evenly reflect kind of the general model of as far as what it looks like geographically in the state. So a couple of things, the importance of highways. So the first question we looked at was thinking about the government in Arkansas, what types of services provided by the government do you think are most essential? And you could choose multiple responses here. In this side, I think you can see my little cursor right here. Maybe you can't. You basically see about 3 things that voters suggested a majority that would be considered essential government services. That's roads, highways, bridges, K through 12 education, Social Security, and Medicare. So you see, health care, education, roads, bridges, highways as the 3 items that voters chose in a majority that they see that are essential government services. You just see a couple things like healthcare and higher ed that are a little bit different, and then maintaining prisons is a much lower at 22. But from a standpoint of looking at the items that the voters see as essential government services, you see roads, highways, and bridges, at the top, if not one of the top ones. At least in this chart, it is by a 1-point margin, which is good. So voters do see the nature of maintaining, building roads, highways, and bridges as an essential government service. Now, the next question we asked them is, thinking about Arkansas's economy, how important are Arkansas's highways to economic development and job growth? Very important or not important at all? And as you can see here, 98% of the voting public in the state believe that the importance that Arkansas's highways are essential to economic development and future job growth. So that's a very universal side that the entire public feels like, to bring apart continued economic development and job growth, it is very important to have an excellent highway system. Regarding funding, so we did some questions about funding. This was a question we asked from a standpoint. It says the state of Arkansas, this is essentially the general revenue question. The state of Arkansas receives revenue from personal and business taxes that are used for government services. Currently, none of these funds are dedicated to highways. Do you think there should be a larger portion, smaller portion, or no portion of these funds dedicated to highways? So they had 3 options, a larger portion, smaller portion, or no portion at all. 51% said large portion, 26% said small portion, and then just about 20% said no portion at all. Now, the importance of this data point is from looking at the 51 to 26, adding those together, that's 77%. So 77% of the public believes that some portion of general revenue, whether it's large or whether it's small, should be dedicated to highways. Now, we took a look at some of the options in 2 different ways. So I'm actually going to move because it's easier for me to read on there. A few of the options. So in this case, we looked at 9 options to gauge the public's opinion about each one of them. And I'm sorry that the boxes are really long, so I couldn't put them at the bottom, but I'll show you another slide where you can see the full percentages. So the first one was transfer existing sales tax on new and used vehicles for state highway improvements without increasing taxes. I'll mention that the green is good, the red is bad. So the green means support and the red means oppose. So in this case, you're looking at the transfer existing sales taxes for highway improvements without increasing taxes is supported by 64% of the voters and opposed by 18%. Of all the options that we tested, that became the one that garnered the most support. The next one was reduce the general sales tax and dedicate a remaining portion of the sales tax for state highway improvements. That was supported by 47% of the public and opposed by 20%. So there, in that one, you have, if that yellow right here, so we're looking at this column right here, the yellow means they don't know. So you do see support, but not majority support. And when you're looking at 47% to 20%, there's not a lot of opposition on that one, but you are looking at a large percentage, almost a third of the overall elected that doesn't really either know or understand what that is, at least enough to make a hardcore decision. But it does have what we call plurality support. So it means that the yeses outweigh the noes, but not majority support. The following we ask is require local governments to take care of more state highways in their counties and their cities. That is supported by 45%, opposed by 36%. So it starts to get, on an option like that, the public opinion is on the side of that, but not by much. And there's still a lot of unknown there. The following one was eliminate further reductions in the sales tax on groceries and use the funds for state highway improvements, was supported by 42% and opposed by 38%. So again, that's within the 4-point margin of error. So you're essentially looking at a split electorate when it comes to the reductions in the sales tax on groceries, with quite a few, nearly 20%, that just don't know. They don't have an opinion on that one. We ask, change the gas tax formula so it keeps up with inflation. Obviously, that's the indexing side. Is supported by 40%, opposed by 36%. Again, on the side of support, but a lot of unknown that the voters don't know enough about the indexing side to be able to make a decision there. The next one was increasing the gas tax for more state highway improvements, was supported by 32% and opposed by 53%. This is this one right here, and right in the middle. You also see that deep red at 40%. That's a strongly support. So that's why we measure intensity to see not only the top lines, but from a standpoint of increasing the gas tax in general. I'm going to show you some more data in a second, but increasing the gas tax, you can see that the majority do oppose such an increase. The next one we asked was apply the state sales tax on gasoline in place of the existing per gallon gas tax. That one was supported by 29% and opposed by 35%, with a whole ton of those not sure about that option. So while there's general non-support of that one, there's still quite a few that don't have enough information to make that decision yet. And then the last two we looked at is increasing the sales tax for more state highway improvements, supported by 26 and opposed by 57. So not much appetite from the voters to increase the sales tax. And then the last one was reduce road and street funding for counties and cities and dedicate the savings for state highway improvements, supported by 24% and opposed by 55%. So in general, a lot of the options the voters have formed some level of opinion, but there's quite a few unknowns. The one that you see the most, at least has the most support out of these, there's a few that start off with most support, but from a standpoint of selling the public, that transfer existing sales tax on new and used vehicles without increasing taxes becomes the one that, out of all these, becomes kind of the more crystal clear side where the general public is with us right now, at least regarding that specific option. Now, looking a little bit deeper what's the effect on some of these options on legislators? So this question was, if you knew that your state legislator voted to increase funding for state highways, would you be more or less likely to re-elect him or her? 68% says they would be more likely versus 14% that suggest that they would be less likely. So from a standpoint of the appetite from the overall public, of what do they want to see their state legislator vote to increase the funding for highways, you can see it's pretty clear from a 68-14 side that they would be more likely. And this is also not a partisan issue. So what you're looking at on this chart right here is the breakdown between Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. And you can see the totals are virtually identical. 69% of the Republicans would be more likely to reelect their legislator versus 72% of the Democrats. So from a partisan difference, there's not increasing funding for highways not a partisan issue where you see Republicans here, Democrats here, independents here. I mean, voters would be much more likely to see their legislator become reelected because they're increasing funding for highways. They do see it definitely as a need. Looking at just the overall data, from the standpoint of summing it up, you have a scenario where the voters do see an increase in highway funding as something that they would utilize their vote for to reelect their legislator. That is something the voters feel that the highways are valuable. They see them as essential government services, and the big data point on that one was they see improved highways as a vital part of economic growth and job growth over the state. So there is definite voter appetite as it relates to increasing the funding for our highways. Voters do see that as something that they see it as a need, they see it as vital services, and they see it as something that is valuable to our economy and to us. Each one of the plans, each one of the options is a little bit different. You do see that in a couple of the instances where voters they definitely support anything that goes directly to them. I mean, if something goes to them, that is something that you see support for. And you see general support on some of the options as long as it's not increasing their taxes. If a gas tax increase is something that comes out, that becomes a much tougher sell, even at the 2 cents level, because the voters will absolutely want to know that any sort of increase in taxes, in gas taxes, are going to go directly to highways. But overall, the general feeling about a gas tax or a legislator supporting some sort of tax is an issue with the voters. Most of the options, though, start out with maybe not, let's say, majority support, but somewhat of plurality support, as well as a general unknown by the voters. They see the need for funding increases. They see it as valuable, but they don't have enough information to just quite understand each one of the options. But the overall desire is there. I mean, they definitely see the need for the increase in highway dollars. They definitely do see highways as being very valuable to the economy.